Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
A strange occurrence. Okay, so I don't post much, and I'm not making this a green text because the story really isn't long enough, and I simply want to know if I should be preparing for something and be concerned. Last night I called my friend to see if he had heard from a mutual friend of ours. He answered, but call cut out after 45 seconds due to his connection being weak, which is pretty typical. Ask him about friend, and he says,
"No, man, I haven't seen or heard from friend at all today."
And call cuts out. Calls back, and all I hear after he picks up literally just him screaming,
"Help me, help me, help me. How did I get here? Someone please help me."
What was weird was, it was 100% his voice, but it was distorted, and I noticed a slight deviation in his voice when we first spoke as well, but didn't think anything of it. So I try calling mutual friend to ask him, and mutual friend says IDK why he would tell you that because we just got done hanging out. So I text and call my friend's girlfriend because they live together to make sure he's okay because of the screaming, and she says,
"Anon, I've been with him for the past 2 hours and he didn't call you. He's been on a video chat with Joe Bro."
So he grabs the phone and says,
"Well, what did I say when we talked? Because I swear to God I haven't talked to you today."
explain to him what I said above, and how he said he hadn't been with friend I was asking about, and he said,
"Yeah, dude, I saw him twice today, so I definitely wouldn't have told you I didn't."
thought he was just screwing with me until he starts getting weirded out because he's big into paranormal stuff. Sends me a screenshot of him being on call with Joe Bro at the time I talked to him. So yeah, I apparently talked to someone that wasn't my friend but sounded exactly like him. And he proved to me he wasn't just screwing with me. I'm not sure if whatever it was about to try to get me to come to it or what, because I didn't give it the chance, but should I be concerned, or do you guys think whatever it was just tried the one time and that was it? Genuinely curious about that, but also what the hell it could have been.
Aliens have simulated versions of nearly every person assigned for surveillance and control reasons. Subjectively, it's as though he were teleported into a sensory deprivation chamber and paralyzed, but can access the internet with his mind. The simulated version of your friend tried to call you for help. You guys must be close.
So no ideas outside of aliens? Oh Mao, I'm seriously curious. My friend is freaking out thinking it's a skinwalker, but if that were the case, it would have to have had access to his phone that he was already using.
I mean, the part about him crying out for help seems pretty telling. It doesn't rule out aliens or skinwalkers. I'm stuck on the simulation explanation, though, because it feels like something humans would do.
Well, I know it wasn't my friend because I talked to him a bit after it happened, and it definitely was the real him. What's strange to me is whoever the other person sounded just like him, knew who our mutual friend was, and said he hadn't been with him today, even though the real version of my friend told me he had been with our mutual friend. And our mutual friend also confirmed this. We told him about it, and he's just as freaked out. They both think whatever it was attempting to get me to come to what I thought was my real friend, because I am the type of person that runs toward the sound of gunfire. Not trying to be edgy, just being as descriptive as possible. So I think the whole screaming part was just a trick to attempt to get me to come wherever it was. Oh, what makes it even more strange was my girlfriend was in the area. They live far away, about an hour. And we also thought maybe they were trying to get my girlfriend to go there, as in a different location than real friend's house. Or both of us. Here's where it gets better. Girlfriend was already on the way to real friend's house to pick up a mutual friend. Couldn't get a hold of mutual friend, which is what led to the whole phone call situation. I genuinely think if the call didn't cut out, it would have asked for us to go to a different location than the real friend's house, because it specifically asked if we were coming up there to meet a mutual friend right before the call cut out. So let me summarize the call for clarity. Ring, ring, ring. Fake friend. What's up, dude? Me. Just chilling, bro. Wanted to see if you heard from mutual friend today? Fake friend. Nah, dude, why? You coming up? Me. Yeah, we were supposed to meet at your place, but can't get a hold of him. Fake friend. Oh, well. Call cuts. Oh, I also need to clarify I was currently unable to drive for personal reasons I won't disclose, so it was only my GF driving, which real friend is aware of. So that also threw me off because obviously whoever it really was didn't know this.
I think that in general we're entering a phase where weird things happen more frequently. Last fall I went outside to bring in the trash at night, and halfway down the driveway I see a figure on the sidewalk hunched over in a cloak facing away from me. I was like 10 feet away from them, and they were clearly very tall but like bent nearly in half like some sort of crone. It freaked me out, so I ran inside for a flashlight, and when I got back outside they were gone. I shone my light up and down the street, checked different yards nearby, and saw nothing. They completely disappeared in a gap of less than 2 minutes. A few weeks later, I was driving home and saw an old neighbor lady on the sidewalk who had fallen and couldn't get up, so I helped her get back inside. She fell again that night and was hospitalized and had to be moved to an assisted living home. The thing that freaked me out was that the figure I saw that night weeks before had been facing this woman's home when I saw it. A few months ago, I was driving to the store and saw a woman in her 60s who seemed high or in distress. Long gray hair, sundress, walking on the sidewalk away from me. As I got closer, she turned to look right at me, and I saw that she didn't have a face, just a black void where the face should be. Weird shit out there, man, and it's getting more frequent.
Really spooky. I generally ignore a lot of the spooky story posts, and I really hope you're not right. I don't want spoopy stuff like this happening frequently.
I think a lot of it depends on how perceptive you are and how open to alternate explanations of reality you are. I've never seen a spooky ghost or a monster or been chased through the woods, but I've seen things like I described in my earlier post. Stuff that other people would have just said, well, that's odd, and forgotten about it. If you don't do that, if you instead say, what the hell was that, and make a point of remembering it, then these occurrences will start to add up in your life, and you'll see that there are a lot of unexplained things out there that people just ignore in daily life. I'll give you another example from maybe 5 years ago or so. I was living in Seattle in a residential neighborhood with roommates. I was smoking a cigarette on the front porch with my roommate in the early evening and chatting. Right across the street from our yard was a lamppost, and I saw under it was a stag. Fully grown adult mule deer with a lack rack of antlers slowly walking up the street under the street lamp. I say to my roommate, holy hell, look at that deer. He can't see it at all. It's only 20 yards away from us and fully illuminated. I do that thing where you line up your arm along someone's line of sight and point him directly at it. He still can't see it. It was at this point walked almost to the corner of our street, so he said, let's go get a closer look so he can see it too. We run up to the corner, look right, look left, and it's nowhere to be seen. This is not a wooded area. It's row homes and bus stops and stoplights all around. And it wasn't running, it was walking at a slow and steady pace. Why couldn't he see it when it was right in front of him? Where did it come from in an urban area? Where did it go? To me, that's what the majority of supernatural occurrences are. They're not sexy or exciting or mind-blowing, but they're happening every day around you if you care to notice them.
Yeah, I understand what you mean entirely. It is just a hard thing to accept. I suppose I have had several things like this occur throughout my life, and I generally ignore them, but this event really threw me off.
Well, I'd say another thing about your specific incident is that there are probably predators out there, whether they be unknown hominids, aliens, spirits, demons, fae, or what have you. Just look at the number of people that go missing in the national forests, and you know something is up. And if you have this base-level belief that we're not the top of the food chain, then a lot of the stories that come out about odd occurrences start to have a different light to them. People talk about lights in the forest, or people calling for help, people mimicking your voice or the voice of a loved one, even things like doppelgangers or shapeshifters. What that sounds like to me is a duck call. It sounds like a hunter using tools to attract its prey, so I think you had the right response to feel like something was trying to draw you out and do you in. Although what could use a telephone to do that and mimic your friend's voice isn't readily apparent to me. There are even more mundane explanations, such as serial killers spoofing a phone number and using AI voice generation to draw you to a secluded location. So, probably double-check that your windows are locked for a while, not to freak you out or anything, or...
Yeah, I have been very cautious since and had similar conclusions in regard to it being an actual person and not some malevolent being, but as you said, who knows? That would be pretty terrifying, though, if some serial killer or something got hold of my friend's voice and used AI and so on.
I grew up spending a lot of time in remote wilderness. around people with long traditions about best practices in such places, and this part of the above post bears emphasis. People talk about lights in the forest, or people calling for help, people mimicking your voice or the voice of a loved one, even things like doppelgangers or shapeshifters. What that sounds like to me is a duck call. It sounds like a hunter using tools to attract its prey. All this rings true to my experiences in life. It's common knowledge to not go to some places alone, don't shout people's names if you get separated, etc. There are countless stories, and I'm not talking about campfire folklore, I mean stuff that serious people treat as common sense because the people who don't are gone. I think most of the missing 411 type crap that's popular online is due to city people treating wilderness like it's a theme park.
Something that occurred to me recently is the possibility that physical objects and spaces in reality might have some metaphysical symbolic meaning that influences events in reality. Like the beach being the boundary between land and sea might have a metaphysical meaning as a boundary between realm, or the way the Mojave River just ends in the desert being a metaphysical symbol of endings. If you think of it like Plato's realm of the ideal, then there is a realm of symbolism layered on top of our reality that we are constantly interacting with without knowledge or understanding of it. Maybe that's what some of these strange occurrences are, and why things like names are said to have power. Can you draw this creature? And about the faceless woman, I seen something similar, but from afar.
It was just a woman. Slim, early 60s, long gray hair down past her shoulders. She was wearing a yellow flower-patterned sundress that went down to about her knees. She was walking on the sidewalk across the street from me and in the same direction I was driving. Like I said in my original post, something seemed off about the way she was walking, but not something I could obviously put my finger on, like she was imitating how someone else would walk. I thought maybe she was having a mental health crisis or was on drugs or something. As I passed her, she turned to look right at me, and there just wasn't anything there, just pure black where the face should have been all the way up to her hairline. Like looking up at space is the best way I could say it. It was just for an instant as I passed her and we looked at each other, but it was truly bizarre and I don't know what to say about it. And a strange thing happened today as well on my grocery trip. I was driving maybe 30 seconds after pulling out of my driveway, and a woman in my neighborhood honked at me as I was slowing down to stop at a stop sign. She drove past me slowly and was screaming at me through the window, like really losing it, pulling her hair and shaking her fist. I have no idea why. I even pulled over to see if maybe something was wrong with the car, but there was nothing. So I thought, okay, maybe she's having a bad day or was hysterical from driving in bad traffic. But as I pulled into the parking lot to my grocery store, a man on the side of the road did the same thing, just screaming at me. So I don't know what the hell is going on. I honestly think people are getting possessed at a higher rate than usual. It just sort of stuck with me since I told the story about the faceless woman near the grocery store in this thread yesterday, and then this happened today. Oh, you meant the hunchback lady, not the faceless lady. Like I said, it was dark out but still visible, and I was only like 10 to 15 feet away from it. It was standing next to one of these brick lampposts I have bracketing my driveway that are about 5 feet tall, and the figure was hunched over lower than that, but like completely doubled over, as if they were doing the touch your toes stretch. So clearly if they straightened up, they'd be taller than 6 feet at minimum. They were completely still with something that looked like a long black cloak over them, just hunched there, not moving. I saw it and I ran like a coward straight inside to get my flashlight. Like instantaneously, I saw the figure, yelped, and ran back inside. They were hunched over like the Witch of Hemwick Lane boss in Bloodborne, but were clearly much taller if they weren't hunched.
Not the anon you were talking to, but your description reminds me of a person's story. All day long I listen to scary stories that are 100% user-submitted, and while you obviously cannot prove anything, they are supposed to be true experiences. After a while, you get a pretty good feeling of whether the story is good or not. The guy who runs the channel does a pretty good job weeding out the obviously fake stories as well. Anyways, I remember one where a man bought a home in a relatively secluded area. He would go for early morning long-distance jogs down a secluded road near his house. Every morning, on the other side of the road, he would always see this hunched-over old man in a black cloak. He described it as looking like the guy's back was broken or something. It sounded extremely similar to your original description. Well, anyways, the jogger would try and say hi, but the old man always ignored him. Eventually at night, he would start hearing strange noises in the woods, like howls, ladies screaming, or just sounds that can't be explained with words. I forget why, but for some he gets the idea that the strange old man has something to do with it. So after about 2 weeks of being ignored, one morning he stops and gets right in the old man's path. He was still polite, but was really being firm about getting a response out of this guy. He said at this point, the old man let out a sigh. He unbent his back and stood to his full height. He was like almost 7 or 8 feet tall or something, and the cloak obviously not that long. And so when the jogger looked down, he saw that the guy's feet were dog legs. He looked up in horror, and while the old man was still mostly covered by his cloak, now since he was not leaning forward, the jogger could see a large canine snout sticking out of the hood. The creature let out another exasperated sigh and then pulled a fire axe out from under its cloak. It was using it as a cane before. At this point, the jogger freaked out and booked it, and did not start jogging again for like 2 weeks and took a different route. I think he also bought a handgun. I don't know why, but I really feel like what you saw is somehow related. It's just the impression I get. On another note, I've studied dogmen for a while, and while they are fairly intelligent and cunning, I've never heard of them using tools or disguises. That's human tier intelligence. So if we take that into consideration, and the jogger's description of what he saw, I forgot to mention he said it was skinny, then I'm led to believe it's not a dogman. Dogmen are huge, and basically have the body of a bodybuilder, extremely broad shoulders and large muscles. To my understanding, it was something more like a pick related. But if it wasn't a dogman, then what the hell was it?
Well, the thing I saw was definitely skinny, and at its full height would have looked extremely gaunt and tall. Never saw it again, but I do get the creeps sometimes when I'm out there at night.
Sorry, forgot pick. The fact that is also sighed in exasperation. Again, that's human-like behavior, but it was a beastly-looking thing. What the hell did this jogger see? And I hope it's not the same thing you saw.
Well, like I said, I just saw them hunched over and didn't see the face or any movement of any kind. For a second, I thought it was a trash bag before I realized it was a human figure. But if I turn a corner one day and see it again, I'll piss myself.
Well, I'd say carry a firearm, but I honestly can't tell if they are effective or not. There are so many reports of them working and so many other reports of them doing absolutely nothing at all. It is just a book, but in this book it focuses on modern Knight Templars. They are basically just a spec ops group that hunts down paranormal stuff. However, the difference is they all also carry swords, because there are just some things that cannot be harmed by bullets. Again, this is just a book. But the explanation is that guns are completely impersonal. They don't have any weight of emotion or willpower behind them, in a sense. But when you swing the sword, it's you powering it. Your body, your strength, your will to defend yourself and your emotions. Perhaps, just maybe, there is some truth to that. I don't know if you lean into some of the more esoteric or magic side of this board, or delve into the astral plane or anything like that. But if you do, that explanation at least holds some water. Again, it is just a book, but it's not hard, and in fact I'd argue a lot easier to carry a knife than it is to carry a firearm. Regardless, everybody should carry some form of protection on them, even just to defend yourself against crazy humans or criminals. Always be prepared. And if you are religious, call upon whatever you believe in to aid you. I'm planning a deep inner woods camping trip for next year, and while I pray that I don't run into anything, I'll certainly be going in prepared. It's a year off, so you'll have to wait for results if anything happens. But if something happens and I survive, you can bet I'll be posting here. Keep an eye out next summer, I guess.
Interesting. Maybe you have a strong connection with the immaterial and attract such beings. You always saw stuff like that. How does your dreams usually look like? And about the faceless one that I saw. I was a kid at the time and was at the church with my mother. I went outside and saw from afar at the window of house a boy about my age. Then he turned in my direction, and he had no face. But it wasn't a void like this lady. It was more similar to a mannequin. Then my mother came and said to me, "In that house there's a kid with no face." I found that really weird, and I still doubt how much of this is true and how much is my mind mixing up the order of events and filling the gaps, since that was a long time ago. The weirdest thing is that my mother saw that I knew about that because of this. I just assumed that he had a horrible birth defect. Only years later I realized how weird this was.
I wouldn't say so. I've had strange experiences in my life, but maybe I've only started noticing things in recent years. I was in the GATE program when I was a kid. Occipital bun, all that stuff they talk about in those threads. But I don't know if that's relevant. The spookiest thing that happened to me was up at a friend's lodge that was built by his ancestor in the pioneer days. One time I woke up with a figure standing over me that I reflexively punched, and it went away. Another time I woke up at 3 a.m. standing upright, completely clothed with all the lights on in a different room than I fell asleep in. I had walked through a hidden door I didn't know about before then. I have vivid dreams and recurring dreamscapes, usually where I have to perform some kind of task to keep everyone safe. Oddly enough, I was able to read words in a recent dream out of a book which I've never done before. It's usually just squiggles. Occasional lucid dreaming, but that's rare for me. I've had sleep paralysis maybe 10 times, but not in recent years. I used to just know things like crazy intuition, but not so much anymore. Like knowing my friend was going to get beamed by a baseball from behind and just pulling him out of the way. The no-face thing was almost like the spoilers bar some boards use, like just black, where the face should be and no facial features or anything. Very strange. I'm in the Southwest.
Not sure if it's still showing me as OP because I'm on my phone right now, but wanted to clarify I'm OP. Sorry I haven't replied much to the thread between work and school. It's a bit difficult to have time to reply. I'm glad this thread didn't turn into schizo rambling because I am genuinely curious of what happened with the phone call thing. Like I said in my previous post, I've had experience with this shit since I was a kid. Just since I was a teenager and young adult, I tried my best to ignore it and not get involved. I feel this may have been a mistake, as something or someone has very clearly attached me to these types of things, entities or whatever, and I would like to learn more.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup.